Welcome back to Apocalypse and Genesis. Happy solstice. It's nearly time for flood and fire. The vernal equinox has turned almost a full zodiac clockwise since that stone on the right was made. And the trigon of the great conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn has already turned a full zodiac counterclockwise. In Bible parlance, it's time for a dragon to fall and a beast to rise. Revelation 13. Mortar and pestle on the left were way more practical than you might expect for a religious piece, but idolatry kept universal truths out in the open for those with eyes to see. They were made by the Taino of the Caribbean. I have another set from the Native Americans of California in which the dragon falling has a diamond eye of Virgo, with Aries rising up like a phoenix behind it. When the dragon falls to bring the flood, expect a reversal. One thing they never taught you in Sunday school is that good and evil are baked into this place. You're locked in an eternal struggle. On Leo, the wild bull of heaven was the sky god, and his job was to die in flames once a procession. Enki, his brother, lord of the earth, was his opposite. And this god of wisdom, soon set to wandering, rises like a phoenix when his brother darkens the sun for 3 days. The dragon grants power to the beast or lion, as David gave power to Solomon. So the one who saved us from the demons a precession ago is due back to lead, and may have to do it all over again to save us from the greedy, genocidal monsters feeding you poison, sexualizing your children, importing chaos to screw up an election, jabbing you to cause strokes and infertility, and promoting World War III as a defense of non-existent Ukrainian democracy. It will be as the Essenes, the Gnostics, and the Colburn tried to tell us. We will see another rise of the sons of darkness against the children of light before there can be peace on a more desolate earth. Edgar Cayce tried to tell us the cycle of light and darkness has completed its 16th turn. So creation restarts with fire, flood, war, and plagues. Remember his big day when the sun, the moon, Jupiter, Uranus, and Venus were all in the same sign? And we found them like that earlier this month. You can see the Vergina sun marking the event upon the forehead of Taurus on the Minoan bull. Like Cayce and the kings of Argos, the Minoans observed the stars and times. Back in the age of matriarchs, which barely preceded the Trojan War and the Exodus 1 Tsar ago, there was a saying among the goddesses who ruled, the bull has begotten a serpent, and the serpent a bull. So look up and watch for the coming of the Aries dragon, because the sky will flip. The sign of the cross of the 4 rams was a cosmic thing before it meant splinters in the back of your biggest hero. And the older sign was an ankh, so you would remember the womb of Virgo wrapped around the pole standing above the first of Aries, what today we would recognize as our autumn equinox. Anyway, we haven't long to wait for ekpyrosis and flood. Normally, we could expect the dragon, let's call him Planet X, to inundate us with water, then keep us in the dark for 3,000 years until next we rose. Leviticus 26:18 or Herodotus 2:123. This time we're promised a quick trip to heaven if we've been good enough for God to reward our souls. I think that is part of what Paul was referring to when he said, O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? Repent before the big day and you're out of here. No more reincarnation every 3,000 years to relearn painful lessons in karma. Amazingly, civilization has visibly been here for 6,000 years, and we still don't have a rain on crime or famine or war or disease. I feel so sorry for my grandchildren who must face a rebirth of this planet without enough old people to teach what they'll need to know. Of all the people you see on TV, how many could survive a year in the countryside without modern agriculture or technology? What did Thomas Hobbes say? Life will be mercifully nasty, brutish, and short. Today we have a summer solstice in Orion, the other side of the zodiac from where the Nibiru system began its approach 9 years ago. So Orion is where I would expect to look one day to observe the Nibiru system crossing Sol's path, coming this way before it slinks back out to space like a wayward comet. I guess it all depends on the year we're destined to see the fourth Aries dragon. I've been watching for it to happen since 2010 and expect we might get one more year of watching before I run out of signs. Rams 1 and 3 are bad, but 2 and 4 are worse. For then shall be a great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. I feel like 1 and 3, the creations at Scorpio and Orion, were relatively mild, a matter of switching pole stars between Polaris and Vega to give us a new eclipse. Ellipse, sorry, as pictured on Serpent Mound, Ohio. On the other hand, the ones at 2 and 4, Leo, Virgo, and Pisces, Aquarius, were huge. What other reason would there be for such detailed stones as we find in Abydos, Ica, Tula, and Ojuelos de Jalisco? The essentials of the zodiac, writing, Egyptian religion, even advanced technologies like heart surgery and rocketry had already been laid out. So civilization, quote unquote, is a game played on this planet again and again, apparently to cataclysmic result and on a schedule. And it's time for yet another Exodus and covenant. The subject of God has been confusing to humanity. We can lump causality together, perceiving one giant capricious sky god who decides the destinies for all. We can divide it up into a wrestling match between Orion versus Hercules, or Draco versus Leo, or Enki and Leo trading places from time to time. Or like the Maya, we can divide it up into the 4 archangels or royal stars called macabres who fall. Or like the animus, we can see it in every unmanageable object, place, and creature. For my money, Persian dualism or Christian Trinitarianism were close to recalling what we're about to see and experience. In such a world, there are winners and losers. I think Jesus was correct when he said the meek, the people of the South, are about to inherit the earth. I believe we are about to see Isaiah 14 in action. Lucifer the destroyer will fall again from Pegasus, be replaced by Nibiru rising next to Lupus the wolf, or we will see the Son of God hung upon the Southern Cross. Students of Abraham will go wild, feeling their beliefs confirmed by the sight, and the atheists who still aren't convinced it was anything but physics will want to kill them for their multitude of delusional stories that turned out to be simile and metaphor. There's just no pleasing some people. A lesson shared between the Maya and Christians is that God dies and is reborn. And it's the story of the sun, and it's a story of the earth, and it's the story of us. There's a time just after multiple coronal mass ejections and micronova where Sol just looks small and dim for a while. At least that's what my Okanagan ancestors said, speaking of when the sun was young, no bigger than a star. I imagine such a time could trigger the next ice age. The Maya said things will be terribly cold 16 years from now. Their goddess, Corn Maiden, hangs herself by the time We've reached the great conjunction of Virgo in 2040. Perhaps a grand solar minimum follows the fireworks of the next maximum, which is due later this year. There are stories out there that crustal displacement is a thing, that Earth and the cosmic environment in which we find ourselves will be like unboiling an egg. Allow me to explain. Go to the kitchen and take out an egg. Place it on end and give it a spin, and it will almost immediately lay down because all the liquid inside, the much greater mass, will remain stationary when you exert force on the shell. But say you hard boil that same egg for 15 minutes. Once it cools down, repeat your experiment, and it will spin like a top. Well, Chan Thomas said we're headed into a magneto-hydrodynamic environment that will turn Earth's mantle as mushy as the core, at which point Planet X's effect as it passes the Earth will be something of a crapshoot. Does it grab the core and the crust slides? Does it grab the crust and detach it from the core? Does centrifugal force take hold of the poles and throw them down to the equator? Rand and Rose Flemath discussed Earth crust displacement in their book When the Sky Fell. Half a precession ago, there was a ring of death around the globe. African fauna washed to the British Isles. American mastodon bones gathered in islands above Siberia. Coral has been found in Newfoundland. Ferns, fossils, coal, and fossilized tree stumps in Antarctica. Water lilies and palm leaves 12 feet long spotted in Spitsbergen. There were once swamps within 500 miles of what we know as the North Pole. So the poles get around, and mass migration is the story of life down here. Read the Vendidad. Aryans left a pole position long before they landed in Persia and India. At this late date, you probably realize that which way is up is pretty relative once you get past the idea that down is where gravity sustains you. Earth is a tiny marble floating out in space, and it wouldn't take much of a gravito-magnetic nudge to get it to wobble some other way. What I mean is that if you take the long view, North is going to get around, and the Aries dragon flies in from different points on the zodiacal compass, depending on where we are in the precession. The Taino piece in the middle suggests Thoth, Camazotz, Ahriman will fly toward an eclipse from the other side of the sky. The Ohuelan piece on the right suggests it will be born in Virgo, heading toward Aries. The one on the left says it can also go the other way, with the sun acting terribly as it rises from the horizon. Bundahishan says Ahriman came on a vernal equinox. If you could move to the Mediterranean by next spring, I'd recommend it. Herodotus says it's the one bit of earth that escapes the flood. On the other side of the earth, the Polynesians say they watched the fall from Hunga Tonga, an area blowing up with volcanoes this time around. The Deagle country projections say this country will be down by 200 million people next year, losing 85% of our GDP in the same time frame. Maybe that's why Biden doesn't care who comes here, and Congress doesn't care if we're bankrupt. When the Nibiru system flies past the sun in our direction, the ancients thought it would look like the falling of an axe, the gaze of an eye, the descent of a heron, or the rise of a dragon. The great god of life was a 1-2 punch of the destroyer and the scorcher. Read the Colburn. Watching the Holy Spirit fly from one end of the sky to the other was like Earth flipping over on its head. What rose as a shin fell as a mem. To remember it, the Jews made the Shema their central proclamation of faith. God is one, and it goes from there. The great apocalypse stones spin like a top. and this one does. But it won't tell you if the problem comes at the first of Aries or its opposite at Virgo Leo. My suspicion is that it does both. The darkness will fall near the first of Aries, and the light will be born near the first of Virgo. And the question will be how fast the whole process takes. And except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Thou shalt see after the third trumpet that the sun shall suddenly shine again in the night, and the moon thrice in the day. And there's big disagreement between the Old Testament and the New as to when the world returns to normal. Ezra said, give it 4 days. Matthew and Mark were not so optimistic. The Taino masks suggest the sun is going to act out in the spring. The Ohuelan pipe says to expect a central fire to erupt, which could be the rise of Nibiru at Crux, or the sun flaring terribly, or a recurring nova at Betelgeuse or Sirius, something the Illuminati are expecting to carry them home. But we're past the best date for this one. In 2015, the solar eclipse and the vernal equinox arrived the very same day at the first of Aries. Instead of apocalypse, it was just some opening salvos. JP Morgan was dumping Russian bonds. Russia was negotiating natural gas deals with the Europeans and Ukraine. Obama was pleading with Iranians to play nice with their uranium. ISIS was trashing Houthi mosques. The Chinese were clobbering the dollar. Gold was climbing in value. FDA was approving GMO foods. And there was a pretty clear need for Islamic reform, kind of a prelude to where we are. Whereas next year's autumn equinox is amazing. The solar eclipse comes within 3 minutes right ascension from the equinox, and that's opposite Saturn, who has taken up position at the spring equinox. If Kronos is our timekeeper, that is his moment. If the Lion of Judah were to tell Saturn, get thee behind me, it would totally make sense. Here's another stone showing we got into trouble when the final Pisces spring equinox was at the foot of the zodiac. The ecliptic fell with Cancer headed for Capricorn. The Aztec crystal says Nibiru rose with Aquila when Pisces fell. About the same time, Egypt was reporting Seth had killed Osiris. And apparently Lupus rose up when Orion was chopped up and interred. Look carefully at the stone goddess in the corner, and you can see the trigon is significant when it arrives the right side of the new house. In this case, precession has caused what was Aquarius to now show Capricorn in the heavens. And with that one sign, the difference between astrology and astronomy, you could say the age of Aquarius began in 2020, but there are other markers to consider. Note the way the statue was carved. It's like a triple entente. The design on her chest shows similar great conjunctions preceded Taurus and Virgo in their time. Our ancestors were brilliant. Mississippians tracked the birth of Venus along the new Aries-Virgo axis as significant. That gives you a precise date next year in which it starts over in the new age. One of their symbols for morning star was the white rhino slaying the eagle. Even though the rhino did not exist in North America, ostensibly it was a race memory from when they were in Asia. At Lascaux Cave in France, there is a cave painting in which the rhinoceros, and yet another portrayal of the bloody Aries dragon, slays Taurus and Orion when the phoenix rises at the axis beneath them. We've seen that was on a vernal equinox, one ram or quarter precession ago. And now the phoenix Nibiru, known to Sumer and Babylon as the son of God, will close out the precession between Pisces and Aquarius. Bactrians tracked the Saturn moon around the zodiac to the axis, which also gives you a time next year. If the life of Jesus implied we're looking for the fall Jewish festivals for Armageddon, then we should probably get our bunkers filled up. It's coming. The world's elites want as few useless eaters kicking around as possible, probably why they're sending us designer plagues. I found this just a little amazing. Nebuchadnezzar left us the boundary stone, but the top line says the dragon will show up behind the moon when it rests between Venus and Saturn, which also happens to be at the new 1 Aries, 1 Virgo axis, which happens to be between Pisces and Aquarius. Virgo, which they also called Gula, is at one end of the zodiac and her scorpion man Saturn at the other. If he's shooting an arrow, it might be that we're again to observe the beam of a Birkeland current between the incoming objects as they align with the sun. Here's another view of that final Venus cycle that began sketching its final pentacle, or Rose of Sharon, back in 2017, and it ends next year, very, very near the new vernal equinox. I couldn't believe someone actually recorded the day of full precession ago when Raven ate the sun on the Aries Virgo axis. But you can read the Native American legend, or maybe you can fly out to Albuquerque to see it. The Park Service has no idea what it means. Remember how the Mohammedans argue with the Jews about whether Ishmael was the burnt sacrifice or whether it was Isaac? I'm pretty sure the Arabs based their claim on the early Canaanite myth of the first son rather than relying on something cooked up by rabbis in the 3rd century BC, riffing on Berosus and Manetho. I'm not saying Muhammad was right, he was wrong about a lot, but if the duty of a prince was to sacrifice his firstborn to save his throne every 8 years on the Venus cycle, and Hagar bore Ishmael years before Isaac, well, maybe Muhammad was right. Too bad that little Canaanite Jewish conflict has been going on now for 3,600 years. You would think at this late date the Jews, Hivites, Hittites, Gergesenes, Perizzites, Canaanites, Amorites, Jebusites, Philistines, and Moabites could get along, but no. Apparently the price of peace was going to be genocide, and Joshua couldn't get it done, leaving the process to his descendants. Welcome to Armageddon. In other myths, it's time white buffalo calf woman returns. She is the one who brought the peace pipe, the rituals, and teaching of the ceremonies, the one who taught us to pray to the Great Spirit above and the Mother Earth below. Jerusalem is intent on sacrificing the 10th red heifer to begin work on their new temple, which will, barring divine intervention, lead to Armageddon. I put the letters above the heifer so you might see it as a key to the end times that lead to Genesis. 10 was the perfect number for the Pythagoreans. Early and late forms of the Yod, Israel's 10th number and letter, signified both the heron and the serpent. So the heifer, signifying Bloody Hathor or Taurus, is food for the Aries dragon, who, according to the Buddha Hishin, arrives on the vernal equinox. War is coming. Get ready. If you have the time, look to what is being dug up at Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe in Turkey. Apparently there was a mystery school there, set up right after humanity was decimated for the umpteenth time 12 millennia ago. Shamans from all over the world gathered to compare notes and engrave their thoughts in stone. So, for example, you can find goannas among the carvings. something you don't find in the Americas, Africa, Europe, or Asia. The bottom line is that the axis, the great atom representing the tree of life, is occasionally thrown down, and it's supposed to happen right about now when Polaris has returned to the pole position. Scientists who for years have told us Nibiru is nothing but a myth are now acknowledging a ninth planet does exist. People who told us not to believe in the galactic wave are saying the sun is about to act out in terrible ways. We get news feeds on how a red star's passage too close to a star like ours can lead to novas. So if you get the chance, take a look at Paul LaViolette's book, Earth Under Fire. Regardless of what the politicians do, ecpyrosis and flood are coming. And I truly don't believe there is a way to prepare. In Terminator 2, Sarah Connor had a great quote about Judgment Day.
Anybody not wearing 2 million sunblock is gonna have a real bad day. Get it?
It's supposed to be the day the children of light, the sons of fire, the children of God get out of here or are transformed. Well, the signs of the fathers are ending. Pretty soon, either it starts over or we'll be without a clock on which to rely. I really wish I could tell you the apocalypse is this year or next or sometime later, but all we can do is attempt to understand the stories, watch the skies, and pray for guidance. For everyone's sake, I hope it all goes quickly. Matthew says it will, so that some of us might remain. Many won't, of course, and many will despair. However, millions of brave souls will remain, hopefully a few wise and good ones. Some, gone to the great beyond, will volunteer to return and help out as civilization again begins to flourish. We've seen that Egyptian religion and a form of proto-writing was exported from the Americas last time before the cataclysm. But civilization has started over many times and in many places. I find it more than a bit tragic that in 6,000 years we couldn't vanquish the seven deadly sins. As a matter of fact, this country consciously ran the other way. The most advanced nation in the world spent its final century worshiping liberty, with the consequence we no longer remember what being a man or woman was about, or how to teach it to our children. We never did figure out how to combine decent government with a humane economic system. So I pray for my grandchildren that in the new age they might find what we forgot. I suspect it will take a new religion or philosophy of very few laws to get things going, one that better remembers the cosmic realities than the scrolls and books of dogma we inherited. The Egyptians had 42 key laws. Maybe we can keep it simple next time. Shema bless you and keep you, now and forever. Take care.